Hey, you guys. Hello, friends. Hello, family. This is Lena K. I'm super excited to be sharing and introducing you guys to the wonderful, amazing Dr. Joe, Marshalla. There is so much that I could say about this man, what I've learned from him, what I share with my clients, with people in my mastermind club, things that work. And I'm just so excited to just start. Dr. Joe Marshalla is an author. He's a teacher. He is many things. He's very much sought after from as being an expert in many different areas. Some things that I wanted to read out specifically: his work on psychologies, on spirituality, on something called timelessness, which I really want us to go into today. His lecturing, counseling, coaching for over 30 years. He's considered an expert in biochemistry of psychology and perception, neurology of spirituality, biochemistry of nutrition, the synthesis of quantum physics into spirituality. I love these topics. I'm getting so excited. And he's and I really love this as well, that Joe considers himself as a wholosopher. And I really love that. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but basically incorporating wholeness into our everyday lives. And from your words, Joe, can you introduce us to you a little bit? And I believe you live in Hawaii, right? So right now it's nice and sunny where you are. It's nighttime over here. You're in Hawaii?
That's correct. Yes, I'm on the island of Maui. And hello, everybody. Aloha. And we are currently in lockdown quarantine. And non-essential movements are not allowed. And so can't go to the office, can't go to so it's it's great. But here we are. So perfect time to do a go-to meeting. So, but aloha, everybody. My name is Joe Marshalla. Everybody knows me as Dr. Joe. And essentially, my goal in life here and one of my functions, I guess, is to provide a lot of tools for everyone to empower themselves. In no way, and please don't ever construe anything that I say as like that what I'm trying to sell you or tell you is the way. That there's only one way. I honestly believe that each one of us has a piece of the puzzle for the whole of everybody, and that each one of us has a different recipe for unlocking that potential inside of ourselves. And so what works for me may not work for you, and what works for you may not work for me. However, if we're all pointing in the same direction and we're using whatever tools we have to head in that direction, then great. So if I can be of service to your life, let me know, and I'll just continuously create a huge smorgasbord for you to choose and pick from and try from and do whatever you can to empower your life and come together and uplift and nurture all life.
I love that. I love how you said that, because sometimes, especially in personal development industry, it's a lot of it is, the one secret to success and this one thing, and it's like, no, there's whatever works for you works for you. Yeah, I know. It's like what works for you works for you. And sometimes people that go through lots of different books or lots of seminars trying to find the secret, and it's like, just what works, just do it, and you'll find out whether or not that method works for you or not. If it works, fantastic. If not, find something else. But I love that you start with that, because I say very similar things. With you, however, you have something that, from my experience, works with majority of people.
There are 20 million people following my work, so I like to characterize it as I found a few notes that everyone can sing.
Yeah. Oh, I absolutely love that. And the notes, it's really truly amazing. Like when I first discovered you, a friend of mine sent a video about you to me from YouTube, and one video led to another, and it was really it was that point in my life when I was transitioning from the old me, the destructive me, into a new, and you got to break down the old to build the new. And I was in that transition period, and again, like you said, finding what works for me. And a couple of things that you mentioned that I would love if you could share with us. So first of all, okay, you've had a lot of near-death experiences that I would love for us to go into just a little bit, because it's really amazing, some of your insights and your experiences. Also about repeatlessness. and then about the days thing. I don't know how else to explain it. I know you know what I'm talking about. The days thing. It's because it's so effective, and the camera meditation thing with the eyes, and I know you know what I'm talking about.
I do. I know exactly what you're
They're
talking
so
about. Yeah.
amazing. They're so effective. I don't know which one shall we. Which one can we start with?
Well, that sounds wonderful. And just so everybody knows, um, yeah, she might be a convert, but no, but there's no secret handshake. I promise. There's no secret handshake. First thing I want to just say is comment on what you were saying about releasing this old self, right? You know, and that you were in this transition to your new self, and and to truly address the concept of repeatlessness that you mentioned, right? That that is not a process that ever ends. So in other words, it's not like you were your old self and now you're your new self. I hope, and I hope that somehow that this conversation that you and I are having and your viewers and the people who get to watch this video realize that that's not a process that ever ends. That every moment is fresh and new. Every moment is an opportunity to grow and change. And I personally live my life attempting to antiquate everything I've ever learned every day, so as to keep my mind in that state of wonder, in that childlike sense of awe, to constantly be discovering. And you know, it's one of the things that I noticed. I played classical Indian music for quite some time, and I got to study very deeply with Ustad Alaraka and Zakir Hussain, who are master tabla players. And as a result of being one of their students, I got to be with Ravi Shankar, Bismillah Khan, all these great musicians from India. And one of the beautiful things I noticed about the masters of Indian music compared to what we consider the masters in Western music is that they never considered themselves as accomplished. In other words, every time they sat down, and this wasn't just a mind game that they were playing, oh, I'm humble. And no, 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 no. Every time they sat down, there was a new subtlety that they knew they could find in their instrument. There was a new tone, a new way to approach, a new way to express. And so they literally sat down with that. And this influenced my life greatly because, you know, I began to realize that I myself, I would feel like I got stuck. I would get stuck in these ruts, if you will. And long story short, you asked me to talk about this concept of repeatlessness. And what that basically revolves around is that, you know, we talk about the here and now, right? And we talk about the eternal present, right? Yet I'm the guy responsible for defining the here and now and defining the eternal present as a law that governs our entire perceptual reality. Because in any way you slice it, and certainly if you get down into the world of physics, that no two moments, no two experiences, no two anything are ever exactly the same. Every second, every nanosecond, every trillionth of a second, everything that exists in this physical world and even non-physical world, or what appears to be non-physical world, is in a constant flux and change. It's either taking on energy or shedding energy, but it is constantly fresh and new. And the only place where repeating occurs is through the perception of our minds. But it's not true. It can't be. It's not physically possible. Now, this is the fact. Okay? This isn't just a new age idea. This is the fact that every moment is fresh and new. And when you really get that, when you really sink in and you allow that to be the governing principle, kind of like of your perception and on how you're going to operate in the world, then you realize that in any given moment you can change.
Yeah.
In any given moment you can alter what is going on. But the other thing that it allows is that, you know, we're all are in this very deep kind of search, looking for the truth, right? And we believe that if we find the truth, then I'll feel the enlightenment, and then I'll be free, and then I'll da 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 da. And we think there's this ultimate truth that somehow we're going to discover this thing, and then we'll be fixed and enlightened for the rest of
And
our
then it's
lives.
complete.
Right? You know, and repeat the law of repeatlessness kind of allows us to release ourselves from that pursuit to a certain degree, because you know, when you really get it, you no longer try to recreate a flavor. a meditation, an ecstatic experience, an orgasm, and anything, because you know that you can't.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really about releasing into being present, being here, being now, and being with what is, and being okay with what is. Even if it's not pleasant. I mean, I have come, you're talking about my death experiences, we'll get to that, but just so people know, I was 12 hours dead in the morgue, toe tagged, right? I mean, you know, rigor mortis is setting in. They put me back in ICU for 6 months. I've got 28 tubes, 14 machines running every aspect of my life. They tell me I'm going to be that way, and I could settle into like what they say it's going to be, or I thank them for their opinion and then get to work, you know?
Exactly. Yep. Yep.
And
Yep.
so so I got to, you know, I was given like very extreme opportunities to really exercise these concepts,
Yeah.
you know.
And
But
I
the
think
idea, go
I'm
ahead. But
sorry. I'm sorry to cut you. I think what you said is so important because sometimes until there's a crisis, people don't change. I mean, that's what it was that crisis was the catalyst for my change. And I think right now, as we're the time that we're recording this, we're in quarantine. You know, this virus is spreading across the planet, everything is shutting down, and people have this opportunity to change. And like you said,
yeah,
that yeah, and you know, again, maybe we can go into that. But I didn't know that. I heard of one of the videos. Well, I saw a couple of different videos. You're talking about your near-death experiences. I didn't know you were actually on a morgue, and is that like and toe tag? That's
yeah,
insane. My
death
goodness.
certificate, the whole 9 yards. I mean, Discovery
Yeah.
Channel did a special on it some time ago. But yeah, I've had multiple kind of death experiences, several of which I characterize as near-death experiences, and then several that are actual death experiences, and they're very different. And I would say that 99.99999% of everything you've heard about death and what people share about death is what I call or what I characterize as near-death experience.
Mm-hmm.
And all the books and all the stories and all the people who saw the angels and all of that is near death. It's
Mm-hmm.
very different than death experiences. And I have an entire 2.5 hour lecture and kind of class online you can get at my website called Dead Man Talking, that I talk about the difference between the distinction and difference between those two states, the near death and the death experience, and then what I experienced differently as a result of those distinctions. And it really helps us, I think, to kind of reprioritize how we're perceiving this world, and how we're going to conduct ourselves. And to continue, kind of finish what I was saying about
Yeah.
repeatlessness, that we had mentioned this idea of this pursuit of the ultimate truth, that if we receive that, right, and that if we get that, that there's a part inside of us, the part of our brain, our mind, that is, I call the seeker, right? And the seeker is seeking this truth. It's seeking understanding. It's seeking knowledge. And when you indulge this seeker, which we all do, and if we examine it very deeply, we come to realize that even it never ends. It, like, the moment it finds one piece of truth that we thought was going to be the ultimate, it realizes there's all this other material it needs to learn. And so then it was seeking over here and it finds it. Oh, okay, got it. Well, I got to go. And then it goes in this direction. And so this seeking thing never ends. And if the seeking thing is never going to find this ultimate truth, if you will, then it's never going to understand, right? It's seeking understanding, but it realizes that each time it understands something new, there's a whole new series of things it needs to understand to go further. And so it's never going to understand. It's never going to know, right?
Mm.
And so if it's never going to understand, it's never going to know, the only thing left to do is to just be,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But be without projection, without trying to define and predict what you think is going to happen, and be without protection, right? And to allow one to be in that vulnerable, open state. Now, there's a lot of things that are blocking that, and all my materials go into how we make these discernments, and how we realize what's keeping us from being in our true authentic self. We're all, this last just 2 years ago, I had some more open heart surgery. I've had 7 bypass surgeries. So here we are. And this is my recalibration, that needs to take place. But in this last one, there were some complications, and I ended up in a coma. And coming out of coma, I had amnesia. And I kind of joke, but I'm really serious. If there was an amnesia pill that I could sell, I would be the biggest amnesia drug dealer in the world. It is the greatest thing. I mean, it is so great. I mean, you have no past. It's all gone. Any
Mm.
issues with mom or ex-boyfriends or girlfriends, it's gone. No, you know, and any worries about the future, there is no future. You're just here because the future is, any worries are based on this comparative data from the past. And
Yeah,
if you've got
yeah,
no data
yeah.
from the past, you got nothing to worry about in the future. So I was just here now. And it's just like, yeah, woo, and everybody else was very worried for me, but I could care less, you know. And but then this thing happened where my brain started turning back on.
Mm.
And the rules, if you will, started turning back on, and the you should and you need to and you ought to and why aren't you and all of this and all of those structures I realized were put in there. I didn't come into this, you didn't, none of us came into this world with these structures. They are superimposed by human minds onto fresh little biocomputers coming in, shaping
Yeah.
and structuring them and limiting them from what they're ultimately here to be. And so that's why you know, so I've had the opportunity to literally have all of that stripped away to get back to the core essence of what came in. And so my work and my lectures and all my stuff are all about how to do that without dying. Yeah, how's that?
Yeah. I like that in a nutshell. Yeah.
I had some extreme pathway to learn all this stuff, but that's I guess that's one of my functions here on the planet, is to be kind of this interpreter and translator of how to do these things. You know, and as we just one last thing, and this idea that we spoke about earlier when we started the conversation about everyone's individual recipe. Um, I just want to address one thing, and that is that when you open your mind to the possibility of trying new things, one of the barriers I find that kind of shows up real quickly for many people is that something didn't work, so screw it. It's all crap,
Yeah.
anyways, you know.
Yeah.
And then they don't, or they're very reluctant to try something new. And I liken that to, like, if you get a haircut and you didn't like the haircut, do you stop getting haircuts? Or do you try and find someone else to cut your hair until you
Yeah.
find someone that you like cut your hair? So in the same way, it's a process of elimination until you find what works for you. And so we'll talk about it later, but you know, my book is 300 and some pages long, and 387, I think, and half the book, it's called Recipes for Repeatlessness. And what it is basically is a smorgasbord of over 1,000 different techniques and tools that are available for you to try, to see which one fits and works for you. And it explains what the tool is supposed to do, how to work with it, and what different types of meditations, different types of psychological exercises, emotional exercises, breathing exercises, meditation exercises, yoga exercises. I mean, all the different tools that we have available. And so that's one of the great resources we have available. That's why Ram Dass called it, you know, the a modern day Be Here Now, right?
Oh,
And rest his beautiful soul. I mean, our brother has left his body at this point right now, and I got to be part of that, which was really quite extraordinary. But um, anyway, so what else do you want to talk about?
well, you said something about that, about the different recipes, right? About people finding what works for them. And sometimes people say to me, you know, Lena, the meditation, I've tried meditation, it doesn't work. It's like, well, okay, first of all, what type of meditation did you try? How many have you
Yeah,
tried? Try something else. You know, some people like music ones, guided ones, some people like different ones. And I remember watching a lecture of yours where you mentioned um, that your mind was so active that what used to work for you, like you would almost, I mean, this was years ago now, that video, and I tried to find it before we spoke, but obviously the algorithms have changed and everything. I can't find the same one, but it was you were talking about how you created this meditation because the other meditations, your mind was just active, like, so they weren't working for you, and then you found this thing that works for you, and it really does work. Like, I share a lot with people, and it's so cool. Would you mind sharing that with us? And
I
it's the
have no
one where
idea what you're talking about. No. What? Somebody help me here. Now,
my imagination.
you might find people who are watching, that I'm irreverent, and it's that, we get very serious, and we're taught to be very, very serious, and there's times to be serious and focus and what have you, but I choose to live my life in a much lighter state than that these days, and there's that saying that angels fly because they take themselves lightly, right?
Yeah, oh, I like
And
that. Yeah. And you mentioned as well earlier, you mentioned something as well about being childlike. And this is
yeah,
something that I find helps so much. And sometimes, I meet people and who are in their 70s, and they still have this childlike nature. Then I meet some people in their 20s, and they're so old. They're just so old. They don't have this childness, being
yeah,
childlike, not childish, but childlike, in that
yeah.
state of, the new and
I
spontaneity and
understand.
creativity.
Yeah. I mean, I remember this was many years ago. I mean, it's been 20 years ago now. I guess I went to my 10-year high school reunion, and even then, everybody was very old, right? And I was a rock star, and I'm meditating, I'm hitchhiking around the country, and they're like, "Oh, I need more security than that. I need more security than that." But they had settled into, the trappings of life, if you will. And there's a big difference between childish and childlike.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I don't even think I need to make that distinction. I think just the distinctions in the words.
Yeah.
But childlike is that, and when I hang out with my grandkids or even any young children, everything is they're like it's stuck in that state of repeatlessness more often than not when they're playing, and everything's new, and this can become this, and that becomes this, and da 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 da. And I actually have exercises in my book that help one to break into that level of creativity and openness. Now, the lecture you can no longer find online, and it's not the algorithms, it's called the Sixfold Path, Aligning with Your True and Authentic Self, and that's the one that you're referring to. And that is now a class, instead of just a lecture, it's a full-on class with curriculum and everything on udemy.com. And if you go to my website, the very front page, you scroll down, it's right there. I mean, there's about 7 classes that I have on Udemy right now.
I'm going to
And
put the links for you guys below. Yeah, I'm going to put the links to the Udemy, all the social media, his website, everything below. So make sure you connect, yeah, and check those out. Sorry to cut you.
Yeah, and when you do connect, I mean, send me an email. This is what I do. You can't interrupt my life. I mean, if you put your phone number down on the contact sheet, I'll give you a call. I mean, I'm doing this worldwide. I mean, literally, I make sure I got the right time zone. If you're in England or something. Anyway, um, what you were referring to with for myself, one of the techniques that really worked for me was mantra. And mantra is repeat. It's a cognitive centering device. Okay, that's so you're cognizing something. You're using something that you repeat over and over and over. And the reason you do that is to center your focus so that you're staying as present as possible in the here now. I mean, I've had a set of beads that I work with for years and years and years that help me to stay present, help me to stay in the present moment, and that is the function of a mantra. Now there are all different types of mantras. There's Hindu mantras, Buddhist mantras, there's English mantras, I am love or I am beauty or things of that nature. But the basic function of a mantra is a centering device. Now we could get into the original mantras, which were written in Sanskrit. Now Sanskrit is a non-cognitive language. So in other words, English is a cognitive language. I say the word cat, and then in your brain you see a picture of a cat, and then all of your experiences of catness come forth, and then you have a relationship to cat. Now Sanskrit doesn't do that. Sanskrit is the direct transference of knowledge and experience through sound. That's what Sanskrit, that is the language of Sanskrit, what it originally is understood to have done. So very much kind of like in the Matrix, where in the movie The Matrix, where she wants to fly a helicopter and she says, Tank, I need a B-51 helicopter, and all of a sudden now she can fly a helicopter. That's what Sanskrit is. And so when chanting Sanskrit mantras, if pronounced correctly, which, kind of like one, I'll give you an example, Om Mani Padme Hum, right? In English, we say Om Mani Padme Hum. Well, that's not how they say it in Sanskrit. But in English, we've turned it into that. But the point is a cognitive centering device, all right? Now, what you were referring to was that there was a period which I was, for some reason, I was using a mantra, and I realized that all of a sudden now I started thinking on top of the mantra, so that the mantra exercise that I was doing almost became like I was listening to the radio while I was thinking. And it's like, no, this is supposed to like limit my thinking and focus my thinking in the present moment. So what I did was I added another mantra. And it's like, oh, okay, good. So now I'm listening to this mantra kind of like a stereo playing in the background, and I'm actively doing another mantra. Well, a month or so later, all of a sudden now I'm doing the two mantras and I'm thinking on top of it again. And I'm like, son of a gun, what the heck? This is so I add another mantra. Well, ultimately, when I get to right around 4 or 5 mantra, and 5 sometimes if I'm really wanting to work on, really stay focused in here now. But right now, as we speak, I have 4 mantras happening simultaneously in my mind so that I can stay here with you and have this conversation and stay focused on the topics that we're talking and to literally hold the space that I'm communicating, so that I'm not just using words and theoretical models. I'm actually being the space that I am conveying. And in order to do that, it requires that I employ these tools. Now, that's one of the things that worked for me. Now, along all of my research, because I've been working on all of this stuff for over 40 years now. I mean, literally, this has been the pursuit of my life for 40 years and plus. And
well, that can't possibly be true, Dr. Joe, because you look so young. How could you have?
thank you. After each one of my health opportunities, I've actually de-aged and have actually gotten younger looking. My hairline's receding a little bit, but my facial features and energies get younger.
Well,
So,
I must say, you're looking so good and so well now compared to when we first connected. I think you just come out of hospital. I think
yeah.
you just
Yeah, I was
transitioned
about
when
a
we
month out of
connected.
hospital. I was about 100 pounds less, and I was very
Yeah.
weak. And yeah. So I've worked on that,
And
and
I was worried,
here
I
we
must say,
are.
I was like, oh, I've just connected with my long time, mentor that he didn't know he had a mentee, and and oh no, like I hope he's going to be okay, and we connected. But you're looking so much, you are looking younger, much
Yeah.
better, fresher, healthier, vibrant compared to when we connected last year. So
Thank you. And I want people to understand that that's not by accident. That's by design.
yeah.
And I provide the tools. I mean, if I can't say that I don't want you to be like me, I want you to be like you. But if you want the energy and the vibrance and the clarity and the playfulness and the youthfulness and the openness of mind, employ some of the tools. I mean, every one of my classes on Udemy, every single one, all 7 of them are 100% money back guaranteed, no questions asked. You take the class. If it doesn't do what I say it's going to do, you get your money back. You just click a button, boom, it's back. So, I mean, I don't know any other spiritual teachers or psychological teachers, whatever you want to call them, motivational teachers, that offer a money back guarantee.
Right. For me.
You do maybe, but I'm serious. I mean, a money back guarantee on any
Yeah.
of my work. But to finish what I was sharing was that so the other thing that you were referring to, besides these multiple mantras that to kind of still my mind, and what I've had to do to employ my very busy, very broad thinking, broad spectrum analysis that constantly occurs. Oh my God, good God, you have to live in this thing. But one of the things that I came across was the early research before neuro-linguistic programming existed, the early research that when they were studying the mind, that they realized that when we are thinking, our eyes actually move around. And so depending on what we're accessing, so if we're accessing a visual memory, we look up and to the left. If we're an auditory memory, we look down. When we're doing critical linear thinking, we look this way. And so it's actually even used in interrogation, that you can tell whether or not someone is telling the truth by how they're recalling and where they're looking or their gaze is going. So one way that we can almost instantly still the mind is to hold the eyes still. And I believe this is what you're talking about, the gaze meditation, and the G-A-Z-E, not G-A-Y-S, the gaze meditation. And people have asked me.
Oh, okay, I just got that. Yeah, yeah. People have asked you that?
Dr. Joe, isn't that a little sexist? And I'm like, no, it's
That's so funny. Yeah. So G-A-Z-E. Yeah,
yes,
gaze as
the
in
gaze.
eyes. Yeah. That's so funny.
It's actually had been an issue a couple of times, and I'm like, no. Anyway, so the the concept behind this is that you have two cameras, these video cameras. They're literally two video cameras, and these video cameras, when held still, um, uh, almost instantly quiet the mind. In other words, we stop accessing different aspects of the mind. The mind's gonna do it, but we limit that, and then it begins to quiet down, begins to get soft, and then you actually begin to see what the cameras are actually seeing. Not because what we choose to look at is very different than what the cameras are seeing. And it's like if you actually held a
Powerful.
video camera up, like right now, as you're looking at me in this picture, are you really looking at the leaves that are in the background, you know, over here or over here, or this plant that's over there? Were you looking at that, or are you looking at my eyes? I mean, the camera is taking in a lot more information than what you're looking at. And so as you still the eyes, it gives you the opportunity to actually see what the cameras are seeing. And you know, you can go to my YouTube channel and just look for an instant way to still the mind. And it's one of the most popular videos. And there's two. There's one from like 2008, and then there's one from 2015, I think. Either one is great, but do that exercise. And I don't want to go into it here because we could for, I mean, you know, I want to broach as many subjects as we can together here. But the instant way to still the mind, and using the gaze meditation and softening of the eyes and stillness, and it's a wonderful way to tune in
It is.
and
I love it.
turn
I
on.
absolutely love it. Yeah. We will find the link, you guys. So check out the links below. I will find those videos and put them below for you guys to check out. Do it. Do it. Do it. Do it. It's so, so, so powerful. Like you said, it's amazing when you still the mind and then you follow the guidance that you provide, and you're there. You find that
Yeah,
sweet spot, as I call it, that sweet spot of that stillness.
yeah. Well,
You're right.
especially in these times, and you know, we wanted to talk about this idea of quarantining and where we are right now in this infectious kind of experience.
Yeah.
Um, the thing that kind of is very interesting to me is that there's been, I think it's less than 6,000 deaths at this point worldwide, right? But there's still a lot of people apparently contracting this. But you know, we have 200 species a day dying, going extinct.
Mm,
200 species every day go extinct as a result of man-made uh, experiences. That's 10,000 times higher than what it's supposed to be.
yeah.
Okay. Um, we have 4,000 people dying every day in America alone from car accidents,
Mm,
right? We have 25,000 people every day dying from starvation. And then last but not least, 1.3 million people die from tuberculosis every year. All right, and so we're talking the difference between 1.3 million people with tuberculosis and less than 6,000 people with this flu,
mm,
this virus.
yeah.
This is not to say that we don't have a flu on our hands that people are dying from,
Hmm.
but last year, just the ordinary flu,
Yeah.
over 138,000 people died from it. Okay, and so
Is that
I
is that
shared
just
this.
I'm sorry to call you. Is that the figures in America? Because I heard something crazy like was it 500,000 globally, like you mentioned, die from the flu or something. I don't know, maybe that's across a couple of years or something. But
That could be
yeah, like
that could be
you said.
worldwide. I'm talking about
Well,
America,
oh,
America
okay, yeah.
specifically.
So
Yeah.
that's yeah, insane numbers.
And so when you think in these terms, it changes the perspective of what's happening here. And then and I wonder how we would feel and what would be happening if we didn't have the internet, if we didn't have even cable TV, how we would be responding and feeling. Now, this
Yeah,
is not to say that we need to like ignore this. It's even like Wim Hof, you know, who's our greatest kind of healing expert right now on the planet through breathing exercises. I imagine you're familiar with Wim Hof,
yeah.
but this guy's got 28 world records now, Guinness Book World Records of being able to be in hyperthermia situations and his
Wow.
skin temperature not even changing,
Yeah.
and using breathing exercises and mind exercises to maintain that. And even he's saying is like, okay, yeah, my breathing exercises will probably boost your immune system, but don't be stupid either, right? You know what I mean? You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so but at the very least, you were saying earlier, you know, that it takes crisis for people to wake up, personal crisis. And for me, it's been these kind of hard experiences and death and, you know, health opportunities, and you've had your crises and what have you. And I would hope that somehow this experience that we're having helps to reconnect us to being more of an ecocentric species. And the ecocentric idea is in contrast to something called anthropocentric. And we have two ways that we can be in this world: anthropocentric reality or an ecocentric reality. And the anthropocentric reality is mostly what we're experiencing, where it's man over nature. That nature is there for man's use and consumption and whatever. We can, I mean, it's
Mhm.
there for us to take advantage of. And the ecocentric reality is man is nature. Your very
Yes.
breath, your very skin cells, you're an animal.
Mhm.
Literally, okay, folks. I mean, you know, here we are, Homo sapien mammals. We
Yeah.
are animals coexisting in a biosphere, and we are so distant from that reality. We are
Yeah.
so cut off from as a result of our cities, and then the numbing from all of the Wi-Fi and the television and all of the EMF that is hitting our systems, and then the foods and the sugars and the oils and the fried and the
I know.
every and and if this great equalizer, because regardless of your status, regardless of your wealth, regardless of whatever you got, you're subject to the great equalizer here, you know?
Yeah, that's so powerful. Yes.
And I don't know any other time where the entire world, other than maybe when they say, you know, the extinction of we had the meteor that hit the Earth and created the winter that killed all the dinosaurs. Maybe that was like the last time we've had something that like really unified the whole planet.
Yeah.
But this is one thing, no matter where you are, it's hard to hide from, you know, at
Yeah.
least the information about it.
Yeah.
And and I have a concept. Give me just a moment that I want to share, and I just lost the thread
It's
around
take
this
take your
idea.
time. The stillness is good.
We have attempted to find security for our lives in things. We have attempted to find security in our possessions,
Mm.
in our status in society, in our accumulation of wealth, in our money, in our whatever. And I really believe that what I'm witnessing is kind of like a planetary personality crisis, where what we have identified as all of our measures of security and what we have invested in as so important, we are finding has zero importance and zero stability and zero um, validity in our reality. Because regardless of how much money, maybe, okay, Maybe if you have money and you can buy foods and supplies, you're luckier than those who don't. So there is a difference there, which is unfortunate. But the point is that our jobs, our mortgages, I mean, right now, I mean, the EU, what is a 6-month moratorium on mortgages and on credit cards?
Yeah.
And the governor of Maui just made it illegal for any evictions at this point
Yes.
if people can't pay their bills.
Yeah.
Um, and so these things that were like all the what we consider to be the functioning, norms are all in question now. And those who've done some spiritual work, or those who've done some practice within inside themselves, or have done some exploration into their relationship with life and this kind of ecocentric reality, are weathering this experience very differently than those who haven't.
That's true. Yeah.
And
So true.
and it's almost, I'm seeing like conversational warfare about between people who've been friends for years on social media about, oh, this is a hoax, or this isn't a hoax, or they're manipulating, and and people are fighting, and it almost becomes like to a religious fervor of religious warfare over this concept of whether or not this bug is real or not real, or going to get you or not going to get you, or whether we should be quarantined or not quarantined, and da 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 da. And then there's those of us who are sitting like, okay,
Yeah.
let's just be present. Let's radiate peace and calm. Let's exercise, scrutiny, and let's exercise responsibility. That in the event that this is actual and factual, yeah, let's not let's not hurt anybody else.
Yeah.
Are our rights being taken away? Maybe for a little bit, we are having to limit some of our behaviors, so for the good of the whole,
Yeah.
right? Um, Yet at the same time, the if ever there was a good call for amnesia, right?
Those amnesia drugs.
Well, in the sense of being present, because
Yeah.
it is getting lost in the stories, and then projecting those stories into the future, and then the fears, right? A
Yeah.
fear, one of the things that I teach is a fear is a fantasized event appearing real. Right. One of the beauties of the law of repeatlessness is that there's no two moments, no two experiences. Right. That the past and the future are inevitable, but the past and the future don't exist.
And exist. Yeah. That's so
They're
powerful.
they're
I hope.
imagined. Right. They're imagined. We bring them into existence, and so fear is a fantasized event appearing real. It is literally a story, a fantasy. It's a movie that we're projecting into the future. But if you sit in the present moment, there's no space for it. Therefore, then it no longer controls your life.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that one shouldn't consider the possibilities, but the projection and the fear mongering, and then the control that can take place of you from your own mind and your own thoughts, can be very detrimental, not only to your your actual life and how you're experiencing life, but then your entire immune system becomes compromised through the
Yes.
stresses and the worries and the concerns. And so the very thing that you're worried about not contracting, you are more susceptible to
Acceptable.
contracting if you're allowing yourself to get all caught up inside this crazy mind game that's going on the planet right now. So, thank
Yeah.
you for letting me ramble on and on. I mean, I'm
No,
very
this is
grateful.
no, this is so valuable because it is in that the whole the law of repeatlessness that you have discovered and brought something like you said, it's a fact, it's a timeless fact. It's nice to for people to be able to like that word for you to be able to bring something tangible and to kind of what I mean, like in someone's mind to understand and to actually apply it in their life, because it's something that nobody can say, oh, this is true. It's true. It's very true. No two moments are alike. Me and you could have this webinar again every day, the same time. We can wear the same clothes, the same time, everything, but it will never be the same experience. Every time is new.
Yeah.
Every moment is new. And that gives people such a freedom to if they allow the opportunity to create, to be just in that state of beingness, which I think that stillness is so important right now with everything that is going on. allowing people to be still. But that fear, like you said, whether it's true or not, conspiracies or not, there's something going on, and how you respond to it in your own mind, first of all, yet alone with other people, is so important. But what you said is very true. People that have been practicing any kind of spiritual, or just that awareness of the present moment, or anything in terms of self-awareness, they are reacting to this very differently to people who don't, who get lost in, like you said, the materials, finding that security in things that you can never really find security with, because if they're gone, well, what happens, you know? So,
Yeah.
so powerful. Also, something about the days, you talk about that, about the you know, even in terms of repeatlessness, what we just, even the habits, you know, we expect Mondays to be a certain way and Tuesdays to be a certain way, although that's all been disrupted now. That's to completely mess people up now, who, you know.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting that you bring that up. I hadn't considered that has been disrupted. What Lena is referring to is um, an exercise that we do in the sixfold path, and I'm trying to see how I can Reader's Digest it to make sense. But essentially, in that class, it's a class about mammalogy. And we talk about memes in social networking, and we think it's a picture with some type of saying on it, and we call that a meme.
Mhm.
But that's a bastardization of the actual term.
Because I was going to ask you, what is memology?
Yeah, mammalogy is a fairly new science, maybe 15, 20 years old, somewhere in there. And it's the study of unquestioned beliefs. Okay, and it's actually, you can
Mm,
get a degree in mammalogy now. And
wow.
and 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 so in the sixfold path, we unpack six unquestioned beliefs, or six memes, six unquestioned beliefs that generate, perpetuate, and sustain separation consciousness, that literally create the separation between us and the world, and
Mm,
and our sensitivities to it. And so we look at what are some of the most prevalent unquestioned beliefs. What I mean, so one of the unquestioned beliefs that we all kind of just accept, we don't even think about,
mhm.
is what day it is,
Yeah.
right? What time it is, because it's not.
Mhm.
It never was, and it never will be. In the 1500s, something called the Gregorian calendar was introduced, and millions upon millions of people were killed because they didn't want to believe it was Tuesday.
Mm,
And this structure of 7 days a week, 365 days, 24 hours, and all this other kind of stuff, and now it's Monday, now it's Tuesday, now it's this day, now it's that day, um, has really kind of taken over. As once it was installed, it's taken over our entire perceptual reality. And now one's personal worth is measured by this device, if you will. That how many widgets you can produce in so much time gives you your worth,
mm. Oh, that's so powerful. Yeah.
right? When you're worthy of being loved and acceptable and having a home and all this, just because you're alive, right?
Yeah.
Just because you've taken birth. But then what you were talking about, the days of the week, is that there's an exercise whereby we begin to examine what each day means to us, right? That Fridays feel very different than Mondays, right? Why? Because we're going to start working. Fridays, we're telling, oh, I'm all done. Oh, yes, on Friday, or casual Thursdays or whatever it is, throwback. And to begin to examine these stories that are associated with days that affect how we feel. Because
Mm,
in truth, if every moment is fresh and new and there is no time and the Gregorian calendar doesn't exist, then these stories should have no bearing on who it is you are and how it is you feel about life. And that every day you can then find a consistency. And then you begin to examine how society interacts with each other based on the feelings of these days and the definitions that we've given to these times and this structure. And so there's a lot more to it than that. But if you haven't considered that every day seems to mean something different to you, and that your moods and how you're going to approach life is affected by this superimposed structure to organize time, it's not that it's bad. I mean, it's really great that everybody who wants to fly to Chicago gets together at 7 o'clock at the airport and gets on the
Yeah.
plane at the same time so we can all get there and we can organize our lives with it. But when it takes over how you feel about life, there's something very important to discover there.
Yeah,
And
that's so
so
powerful.
the sixfold path, we unpack that. And then it even has teaching aids that you then put around your home and in your car, and you can download these for free and print them and start doing a 42-day exercise that that helps you to unpack these 6 unquestioned beliefs that alter how you perceive and interact with your reality.
That's so powerful. And I must say that's something that since I learned it from you is always stayed with me, and it helped me to reprogram. Like if I ever get into the thing of the days of the week attaching, like I have this awareness based on what I learned from you. And I get this a lot because for me on a Monday, I might do some work, but usually Monday as a way to kind of break that. Mondays usually I have half the day off, as in my weekly structure.
Yeah, yeah,
Sundays I do a mastermind, and people's reaction to that, oh, it's Sun. I'm like, no, I work on a Sunday. Sundays, weekends are very creative for me. I take some of the Monday off, and I like turning the whole structure around on its head because, some people, like I said, they're very surprised. Oh, you work on a Sunday? Yeah, I do. And then they're
yeah.
surprised of, oh, Mondays I choose to have that off to break that programming for myself and to remind myself of this repeatlessness. And I think you had a mantra. I just remember something like, it's Monday, no it's not, and it's Tuesday, and you had this to remember to remember. It was so good and instrumental in that reprogramming of my mind with, like you said, how you feel about certain days, and also how you feel that you should be productive on certain days, and certain days that you should be resting. Well, maybe you feel productive on the so-called rest day, maybe you don't, so really, really, really powerful about, again, just mastering yourself, taking care of your own psychology, your own emotions, and this repeatlessness, and questioning the days
I
and how
just
you feel
unplugged
around
my
them.
headset, so sorry.
It's okay.
There we go. Now I can hear you again.
It's okay. um how are you doing for time?
I'm here.
Okay, cool. This is so fun for me. I'm imagining the girl that I was, and some of the videos I used to watch while I was going through my transition, and I would be, maybe I was in my mum's garden and the sun was shining, and I would be watching your videos, and I'll be trying to meditate and read and just get myself together, And like you said, it never ends. I'm always learning and growing. I'm always, there's always dark nights of the soul, and you face yourself every day. You're
Yeah.
learning about yourself, you're growing. But that, I just remember those days so clearly when I was watching your videos, and the things that they just stayed, and they made such a difference. And not just to me, it's like a wave, isn't it? The ripple effect, like you've affected me, and then I've shared that with people, and it's like this wave
Yeah,
that just,
it's really interesting. I mean, as I even share in the lecture, I'm just going to babble here and I'm going to say a whole bunch, all the things that I've learned, and if it can help you, great. And I don't know why, but somehow, some way, I've been given that opportunity to be the guy who happened to say it just right for like a lot of people, you know. And I try to say, I try to share what I say is like the truth, not my truth, you know. However, one thing that I'm noticing, and because the materials have been around for so long now, is that my main demographic when my book went bestseller and all of that was women 45 to 55 years of age. And it's like their children were grown up now, and they'd kind of given up their careers, and they'd given up the wits to be mothers or what have you, and now it's like, now what? Now who am I? What am I? And the book helped them to kind of reposition themselves in their experience of life. And what's really interesting now is that more often than not, the people who are buying my book and turning on to my material are their children. Right? This younger generation that's coming up now. And yeah, my mom, you know, I remember the book around the house, and I finally picked it up and read it, and wow. I mean, you know, it's really interesting that it's just, it's now being available for another generation.
That's
You
so
know?
cool. And is that the book you're talking about right behind you there?
Ah, yes. Dun,
I
dun, dun,
love
dun, dun,
the
dun.
cover already. I love it.
Repeatlessness. Yeah. It just happened to be here.
I love it. You guys,
What a coincidence.
uh, grab a copy of it before. Is it available on Amazon?
Um, I don't sell it through Amazon anymore, but there are resellers who do.
Okay. Where's
And
the
they
best
charge way
place?
too much. I mean, there's people charging like $300 for a copy of this book, and people are buying it. It's like, no, come to my website.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you hear that?
$22.
Go straight to the website to grab the book. Yeah, go to the website to grab yourself a copy of the book. And if you find this message valuable at all, if you like anything you've heard, then support, you know, and how you support, you support by sharing, by connecting, by buying, whether it's the Udemy course or the books or what have you, you know, support, share. And
Yeah.
I'm going to get myself a copy. I'm really looking forward to
It's in audiobook form too. And if you go to my website, and when you get to my website, I wish I had a screen sharing option. I could have shared maybe a picture, but when you get to my website, right there, I mean, it says repeatlessness, a life of living, each moment is new. And then um, there's a button, a blue button that says start your journey. And if you click that button, you can listen to the first chapter of the book, the audiobook, for free. And that's where unplugged dog dreams. I don't know if you remember that concept. There's three unrelated psychological experiments that took place in 3 different decades, whose findings, when strung together in a particular sequence, create an unrefutable, undeniable explanation as to why we are the way we are here on the planet, and then what we can do about it. And
mm,
so the first chapter kind of sets up the entire, you know, thesis for the book. But you can have that for free, and it's me reading it, and the audiobook itself is completely unabridged. So I read every single word, every comma, every breath that you hear is what you would read in the book.
that's
And
so
so
cool.
it's an 8.5-hour audiobook as a result of that.
That is so cool. And at the time of this recording, there's a quarantine. You've got plenty of time to listen to that. You know, you could do that in a week, in a day. So, you know, if reading a book isn't your thing, you're more of an audio person, then there's that option too. That's so
You
cool.
know what? When we finish this exercise, I'll do something that if someone buys the audiobook, they can get the paperback for half price. So how about we do that? And I'll just set that up on the website, and we'll get so you can have both if you
You hear
want
that,
both.
you guys? So you don't have to choose one over the other. So if you, by the time this goes up, there will be a link below and a promo code or something where if you buy the audiobook, you'll get the book for half price. That's so cool.
Yeah,
Thank
they'll
you,
just have to go
friend.
to my store. They'll just have to go to my store, and it'll be a choice. So that no codes, nothing. You just go to the store within my website, and you'll see buy both, and you get the book for half price. So there you go.
Fantastic. Okay, that's so cool. So you guys, very simple. We will put all the link below so you can get both and you don't have to choose one and the other. That's so cool. And it's also great to share. You know, I love sharing books as well once you read them. And although a lot of my books I like to highlight them, like I really like to study them, and then sharing them, you know, buying more copies to give to people, sharing the message. This especially at this time, I feel like this message really is so needed right now. It's so needed. So many people need this message. If they can bring the repeatlessness into their awareness into their life, I feel like it will really create a lot of peace for them and let them be still in the present moment without their mind going crazy in the future, in you know, behind. And so powerful. um
You know, it's interesting that before this interview, I had another one, and that I was doing, and the person was telling me about how they've had my book now for 10 years, and that they still listen to the audiobook every now and then. And because it's that each time they listen to it, as a result of their own personal evolution, they hear something new in the material. And it's like, wait, I heard, but and I said, well, you know, I wrote it, and the same thing happens to me, right? I mean, you know, my wife and I listen to the book in the car all the time. It's like, no, that's good. That's really good stuff. Wow, I like this guy, you know.
That's so cool. That is so cool. And I think that that's the thing, isn't it? When we're growing or we're just in a different point in our consciousness, you can watch the same thing, listen to the same thing, you get something different from it, whatever you need at that time. Like you hear, like it's
Yeah, well,
same word, you get something different.
the research indicates that whether we're reading a book or watching a movie or a video, we only retain around 20% of whatever it is. And that's if you're really actively doing it. And so it indicates that you need to watch or read something 4 or 5 times to really retain a good amount of it. So it would behoove someone, if they're going to read a book, to think that, you know, to keep it around the bathroom or whatever, just know that if they really want to get the information, that not just my book, any book or any program, that they're going to have to do it multiple times to really integrate it.
Yeah, that's very true. Very true. Yeah. Yeah, because how many times people have gone to lectures or just read a book and you can only really remember a little bit. You certainly can't remember the whole thing, the whole book or the whole lecture or the whole audio or the whole film, but then you watch it again and you start to see, like you said, the more you watch it. Did you say about 4 or 5 times?
Well, they say 20% retention, depending on the presentation, and it depends on your learning style too. Then, I mean, originally that research came out and said that, you know, someone who watches a video, well, someone might not be visual, they might be audio, or someone might be tactile, or someone might be, you know, oh, I can't what call it, holographic in their you know minds and how they retain information. So,
Yeah.
the learning style or the retention style also is a factor.
Yeah.
And so that's why in my Udemy classes, I attempt to not only give visual and then auditory, but then I also give quizzes and then I give handouts and I give all different types of, so that different people's learning styles are addressed within inside all of my classes so that there's the greatest amount of retention and absorption as possible.
That's so amazing. So, so powerful. So whatever learning style you have, you guys, Dr. Joe's got it covered. So
I try my best, you know,
yeah.
because I understand that, you know, and
Yeah.
myself, it was one of the things that, you know, struggling with dyslexia as a child, I hadn't read a book until I was 18, until I taught
Wow.
myself. They didn't diagnose that, you know, as when I was a child. They didn't know it really even existed. I mean, they knew, but they didn't, like, it wasn't part of the screening. And so, you know, but they kept on passing me from class to class because I was a good guy. I was smart. I just couldn't learn through reading.
Mm.
And then when I finally realized how to read and I was able to teach myself a system for making sense of these characters, then I couldn't read enough. Then it was like, and then I learned new ways to read. And then I created a new way to read. I mean, you see it in my biography, visual graphic reading, VGR. And, you know, it's a rapid reading retention kind of technology. You know, when we, I'll go into this because it's a very interesting
Yeah, yeah,
subject.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
And it's interesting because I was going to ask you, what was Joe like, Dr. Joe like when you as a child? And it's so cool. You've got into it naturally. So
ah,
that's so cool. Yeah.
I heard it on the
Yeah,
telephone.
yeah, yeah. You picked it up.
I was super playful, really adventurous, very much an athlete. My mom was a dancer. My dad was in like the circus and an acrobat. My father was a dancer. By the time I was born, they were all done with those, and um, so I grew up as a gymnast, as a dancer. I was tap dancing when I was 4. And state champion gymnastics. I mean, like, you know, it's very successful, very physical, very oriented that way. When I was 13, I got hit by a car, and that's what began my journey because I got hit by a car and was thrown over 100 feet and walked away unscathed and had a huge out-of-body experience. And for the next 6 years, I had no way to explain this out-of-body experience. The priest at my church was telling me that was the devil, and I said, "No, I'm the devil. I just, you know." But it wasn't until I got to college that I met a guy named Tom, and Tom turned me on to the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and then turned me on to all these other different materials. And then I ran and got to meet Ram Dass, and then all these different things began to happen, and the structures and things I began to understand. But visual graphic reading, this is a very cool thing. Did you know, okay, when we read, most of us, in fact, like almost all of us, and there's very few people who don't, actually are sub-vocalizing what it is they're reading. In other words, they hear a voice in their head speaking the words that their eyes are seeing, right?
Yeah.
And so as they're reading, their mouth isn't moving. It's not like they're reading out loud, but they're reading in loud, you know, where there's this sub-vocalization. Well, the fastest that we can sub-vocalize is around 500 words a minute. So the fastest we can actually read is limited to around 500 words a minute. And we can skip words here and there and what have you, so we can increase that maybe to 6 or 7 if we're skipping whole areas and just looking for keywords. But what happens when we read is that when we're first learning, let's take the word cat, right? We have the characters C and then A and then T. So it's C-A-T, C-A-T, and we're looking at these characters, these graphic symbols that are representing this structure, and we have C-A-T, C-A-T, K-A-T, 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 and all of a sudden this magical thing happens where the separateness of each one of the letters collapses into a singularity, and all of a sudden it's cat. It's no longer K-A-T, K-A-T, it's just cat. And then we associate a picture of a kitty cat with that cat, with those 3 symbols and what have you, but we've collapsed those 3 symbols into a singularity. And so VGR, or visual graphic reading, is learning how to allow those symbols to generate the pictures without the audio part of hearing the words, so that you watch a visual movie as opposed to sub-vocalize what it is you're reading.
That's so powerful. That's so
And we were able to increase people's ability and comprehension by a factor of 4. So 400 times faster. So basically you could read at 2,500 words a minute and retain more. And so then we sold that to Starbucks, to our corporation. We sold, to FedEx, and to American Express and Exxon. Well, in the Fortune 500 companies, we taught the executives and their executive board to use this type of reading. And then a company called Read Speed International took that on, and I was just helping to design that whole program, what have you. But that was back in 1994.
wow.
And so I don't even know if it's around anymore. But just to give you an idea that this brain is much more capable and much more able to do things than we give it credit for. And one of the first things in any of my lectures that I ask people, I say, okay, who would like to learn something new today? And most of everyone sitting in the audience raises their hands. And I say, and how many of you would like me to teach you something today? And they all raise their hands. And then I say, well, what if I told you that it is absolutely impossible, neurologically, auditorially, any Lee you could come up with, it is absolutely impossible for me to teach you anything. It gets me off the hook, right? But the fact of the matter is, everything you've ever learned, you taught yourself. Someone may have shown you something. Someone may have explained something to you, but it was your application of that information whereby you taught yourself. No one taught you how to pick up a fork and eat. You picked up a fork and ate. You saw people doing it, but it wasn't until you learned how to use that fork and get the food to your mouth that you were able to. But you taught walking, how to speak, how to read, how to tie your shoes, everything that you've ever learned, you taught yourself. And when you really take that on, then you realize that because we've been taught to blame, oh, he was a lousy teacher. Okay, maybe he didn't present the information, or she didn't present the information in your particular learning style, and maybe they are a bad presenter in explaining things. But ultimately, everything you've ever learned. And so when you take that on, The same is true for every aspect of your life. If you're not feeling spiritually involved or evolved or knowledgeable or in a place that you're happy with, it's not the church's fault. It's not a meditator teacher's fault. It's no one's fault per se, but it is an opportunity for you to realize, wow, this is up to me.
Yeah.
And it's always been up to me. And, oh, okay. And so then, you don't need a university. Everything that you would ever learn in a university, you can go to the library and learn. And nowadays, thank goodness, you can go online
Yeah.
and set yourself up though. Okay, I am ready. Before you even turn that screen on, before you pick that book up, you set yourself up like, okay, brain, it's time to learn. You're not like, oh, I hope I learn this. I hope I can get this or what have you. It's like, no, you're in the, I mean, when Captain Kirk gets on the bridge of the Starship Enterprise and he says, shields up, right, to get the protective shields of their spaceship up. He's not like, computer, can you put the shields up? No, it's like, it's shields up. Well, in the same way, we command our own mind. It's like, okay, brain, it's time to absorb this information and make the correlations that are necessary so that I can learn something new and expand my reality and perception.
Yeah.
And you come to life with that. You come to life not as a victim of maybe, or is it going to, you come to life with setting yourself up and commanding this biocomputer to do what it is. If I didn't do that, I wouldn't be talking to you today. I'd be sitting in ICU with 28 tubes and 14 machines running every aspect of my body.
Yeah. That's so
And
powerful.
so it's not just an idea, it's the fact. And I pray that you don't have to have a crisis in your life, as you were saying earlier, in order to actually come to grips with those thoughts and those ideas.
Yeah. Yeah. And what you said about the application, so many people think if they can just get through reading a book a week or go to these seminars and think, and it's like, that's fine, but if you don't actually apply, you don't actually have the knowledge. And I always say, like, to people in my mastermind club, I always say to them that information is just potential knowledge. You only know something through application and your experience of it. Like, you only really say, oh, I know this because you're doing it. Maybe you're aware of some information, you read it, you've seen it, you've heard it, but you have to apply it to really have that knowingness, if that's
Yeah.
for
I
that
just
word.
had something today that just happened today that was a little frustrating for me as a teacher, and that someone actually gave me 4 out of 5 stars for my class, right? And I'm like, what? How can you give me only 4 stars, right? And so I write him and I say, listen, I understand. Thank you for taking the class, and I'm grateful that it's helping you, because he said he enjoyed the class and what have you. But what would it take for me to get that all elusive 5th star?
Yeah.
And he said, oh, well, the class was great. I loved it. And I'm going to apply the technology. But it wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. And I haven't written them back, and I don't know that I'm going to, but
Mm-hmm.
it's like you take a car on how to wash a car. You take a class on how to wash a car and detail a car. But then when you actually have to like go out and do the work, then it's like the class sucks because you got to go do the work. It's like, So it's very
Mm-hmm.
much what you're talking about here,
Yeah.
that because it wasn't easy, that he's actually going to have to apply himself for 21 days or 28 days to reverse all of the programming he has for 38 years.
I know.
So we got to keep it in perspective. I mean, these habits, these mind habits, these thought habits, these behaviors that we are exhibiting that we want to shift did not happen overnight.
Yeah.
And so it's going to we can pretty quickly alter them in the scope of the percentage of time. It's like maybe 1/1000th the amount of time to reverse a behavior than it did take to learn it. But it does take some repatterning and literally reprogramming of the brain and of the mind. I liken it to, like, if you have a mountain, right, and it's all the water is going down to a single creek. That single creek is the behavior that you've had all your life. Now, if you want to create any other tributaries, you might be able to draw a line, but the water goes in there, and it's going to take some time for those tributaries to get deeper and deeper and deeper, so that then the water goes to those and no longer down that one that has been burned in for so long. And so
Exactly.
it takes time to build those channels, and then for them to be the go-to, you know, channels. And then you have a brain part called the reticular activating system. Reticular activating system, and its job is to prove that your beliefs are true, right? So if you believe something isn't going to work for you, guess what this brain part's going to do? It's going to find all the evidence in your reality to see, look, that doesn't work. It's a waste of time, da 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 da.
Yep.
And so we need to be aware of all of these different things that are going to try and take you off course.
Yeah.
And just relax into the idea that, you know, once you wake up, you can never go back to sleep. Okay,
Mm.
you can doze,
Mhm. Yeah.
take a little nap, but you can
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
go back to sleep. And so, you know, stick to it,
Mm.
and give things times. You know, it takes 21 days to form a new habit.
Mm.
21 days to
And now
form a new
they're
habit,
saying,
and
yeah, and now like,
28 days to form a new behavior. So
mm.
21 days to get into a new habit, but then if you just do it 7 more days, it becomes a behavior in your life,
Yeah.
where it's just automatic. So
And I think was it like Cambridge or something? They said that it's 66 days. So you know, it's whether it's 21 or 28 or 48 or 66, it takes some time. It takes the commitment, the consistency. And I think
yeah,
people
the
think
consistency,
that,
I believe that research was referring to the amount of time it takes to reverse the traumatic effects of a trauma. And
okay,
so the 66 days has to do with um, being able to reveal the trauma in full, and being able to experience and see it without then the traumatic response, and then to have it no longer manifesting circumstances in your life, so that then you can get in touch with the feeling of the unresolved trauma. And
okay,
so I believe it was a 66-day process that they were suggesting. So it takes about 2 months. Um, I
yeah,
don't believe it.
yeah,
It depends on what you're doing.
yeah,
My empowerment program teaches you a process on how to do that in 2 days. And if you go to any of the testimonials in my class, there's probably 600-700 testimonials on that class alone in my testimonial area, where people say, you know, I've been in therapy for 30 years, and after this 2-day class, I finally have the tools to actually take care of and neutralize and equilibrate all of these traumas that I've had in my life. You
yeah.
know, so
That's so powerful.
there are tools available.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And the main thing is that people actually apply them. Like, there's no magic pill, you know, like that, you know, goes to
I
doing a
wish
course
there
and
were.
then
I
being,
wish
yeah,
there were.
and then being surprised that you actually have to do the work. It's kind of like going to the gym. I explain to people doing this kind of work. You would never expect, when we understand this, you would never expect to go to the gym, hire a personal trainer, or let's say you buy the trainer's online fitness class and just watch it and expect something to happen. You have to do it. So you have to do it, or like hiring a personal trainer to do your push-ups for you. It's like, okay, he can't do the push-ups for you or do the walking for you or whatever it is. You have to do it. He can support you, guide you, give you the tools, you have
Yeah.
to do it. And I don't know why people think this different for the body than it is for the mind. It's even harder, I would say, for the mind, because it's you know, it's it takes focus, and we're so in the age of distraction, as I call it. But
Yeah.
you know, there's so many tools that you show that show you just how to, not just to be still, but how to focus and how to do so many, just to get
Well,
that
there's a lot of unnatural things that are also affecting us, you know.
yeah.
Um, the average human being who lives in a metropolitan area is being bombarded with anywhere between 3,500 and 4,500 man-made square waves from television and cell phones,
Mm.
and EMF from transformers and your refrigerator and your microwave or whatever, all these things. And those are really hampering our system. And then, you know, just something like this, you know, think of all the pharmacies that exist not only in the United States but in the world, and then all the aisles in the grocery stores that have, you know, the aspirins and the decongestants and all that stuff, and then all the hospitals. So think of all the medicine and all of the antidepressants and all of that stuff. That only represents 25% of all the pharmaceuticals that are manufactured. The other 75% are used as biosecurity in the animal industry. And so we are eating chemicals, even in organic. By law, you have to have so many different chemicals, even in an organic cow, to make sure that you're not spreading in different types of bacteria and infectious diseases, and for food yield security, right? And for food security. And so 75% of all the pharmaceuticals that are made are in our animals, and then we are eating that. Does that have
Yeah.
it?
Oh my.
So less than, like, I'm not trying to say be a vegetarian, but I'm just saying you've got to think about these things are in your system and are influencing you. Brand new babies, okay, before they're even born, still in utero with the mother. This just came out 2 weeks ago, or 2 years ago. It used to be there were 200 known carcinogenic man-made chemicals, pesticides, herbicides, house cleaners, bleaches, things of that nature in the baby. Now there's 300 known carcinogenic chemicals in the baby's blood system before they're even born. And that's just from the outgassing from the carpets, from the new car smell, from your fabric softeners, your scented clothes. I mean, all this stuff.
My
And
gosh.
so how does their neurological systems even know what normal is, when the whole thing from the very beginning is fighting and defending itself from all these abnormal things being injected into the system? And as adults, that number just skyrockets. I mean, that 300 is what has been allowed to get through the blood barrier between the mother and the baby, because we've gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. And before that, nothing could get through. Well, these chemicals and then the combinations that are occurring as a result. And so the point is that there's a lot of things that are fogging your mind. There are a
Yeah.
lot of things that are creating a veil, that it's just easier to sit in front of the TV and eat some snacks and veg out than it is to realize that there's a whole nother world here.
Yeah. And
And so it's a whole process of, so you had mentioned, I talk about holosophy, right? And this touches the idea around holosophy, that after the 60s, after think about this, in the 60s, for the first time in our history, at least recorded history, love was an option, that we could all love each other, and that we're one big organism here, Gaia, the whole concept of oneness, and that we're one species of animals. This was new in the 60s, like, and then it splintered off into all these different ideas. Well, this is the way you love. Well, if you just take care of your psychological issues, then you'll be at peace and you can love and be one. Or if you just take care of your spiritual needs, or if you just do yoga, or you just become a vegetarian, or do. And it was like, when it's all of those things, it's working on all the aspects of all of yourself: the psychological self, the spiritual self, the familial self, the social self, the sexual self, the philosophical self, the financial self. I mean, there's 8 different areas of your life, but to work on all of them all of the time, and to find anything you can to enhance those, But it all comes down to really asking yourself a couple questions in life. When I'm laying there, I finally get back in my body. I've got all these machines running me. If you take one tube out, I die. Right? I mean, there I am. And I'm like, okay, I'm back. Why? Like, what's the point? And it got me thinking about life, and thinking about how everything here has a function. Every mineral, every microbe, every bacteria, every virus, it serves a function in this biosphere. Right? There's no extra stuff.
yeah.
There's no just what's that? It's just some extra stuff that the universe made and just left it over there in a pile. No, there's no extra stuff. Everything is serving something else.
Yeah.
So what is it? So everything has a function in this biosphere. So what is the function of a human life? And that's one of the questions. Not the purpose, not the meaning. What is the function? And it's very different. And so for me, laying there and thinking about this, the only thing that came, the one, I mean, a lot of things, ideas came, but the one that really kind of stuck and makes the most sense to me, that my function, and I believe the function for humans on the earth, that my function is to uplift and nurture all life. That's why I'm here. Is it to accumulate things and gather stuff and hoard or what? I don't think so. I don't think that's our function as a species of life form on the planet. So it's a question that everybody needs to answer for themselves. What is the function of your biological unit here? And then another question you might want to ask yourself is, do I live in a loving or violent universe?
Mm.
Do I live in an abundant, loving, or do I live in a violent, aggressive? And some people say, well, I live in both. Well, you can if you like. But the point is that whichever one you choose is going to direct your reticular activating system to make correct. This thing, this part of the brain that proves that your beliefs are accurate. And so these two questions alone, if you can get those, because how you uplift and nurture, what do you say to the person at the checkout lane? What do you say to, whoever, your insurance agent, your bank teller, your friends? And so
I love that.
when we get to ask these questions of ourselves, and then we begin to realize that every moment is fresh and new, and that nothing is repeating, and that if it is repeating, more often than not, it is a pattern that we've learned at an early age from a trauma that we have not resolved yet, which then whereby we manifest circumstances in our lives. So the individuals, the circumstances and the individuals, the players, if you will, in the storyline might be completely different, but the feeling is the same. And that we manifest dynamics in our reality that are based on our unresolved issues from our past. And so to begin examining these things and begin working on these things, begin clearing these things, begin learning how to cleanse one's soul, if you will, I mean, for lack of a better way, this memory of the traumas, that occur. I have this thing that what happens to a person in your presence, so what happens to another person in your presence is a function of who you are, not what you know. And who you are, who you are is everything you've ever experienced in your life and what conclusions you've made about those experiences. And whether or not you've come to peace with those experiences. And you'll find in a couple of my lectures, I talk about, the law of attraction, which I don't buy into the law of attraction as it was sold in 2005 in The Secret. And if you talk to most of the people who participated in The Secret, I won't even go into it. It's a long story, but there's $18 million that she stole and and the lady who produced the whole thing. I mean, it was just kind of crazy, and people distance themselves from it. But the point is that the underlying principles that I believe have to do with how we attract things in our life are what I call the principles of resonance. And we can see the example of the principle of resonance as I show in two different lectures, where we take two guitars, and the guitars, they're identical guitars, and they are tuned the same. And we set one over here, and we set one about 10 feet away over here, or even 20 feet away, and we pluck the string on this guitar, one of the strings on this guitar, and that same string on the other guitar begins to vibrate. We mute them, we stop them from vibrating. We then pluck a string on this guitar, and that same string over here begins to vibrate. So that essentially, whatever vibrations are coming off of this guitar, they are looking for some place to resonate and be reflected back. And so the tuning of this instrument is your relationship to what has happened to you in your life. And so each one of the events in your life is like a string. And if these strings are in harmony with each other and are tuned together and at peace with each other, that is what then gets reflected back and resonated in your reality. But if you have discordant notes and things that are out of harmony with each other, those are the notes that are going to be present in your life. And this is just a physical principle that happens.
Yeah.
And so if you want to be free from a reoccurring pattern or pain that's experienced in your life, you need to re-examine where you got the tuning in the first place, if you will.
Yeah, that's so powerful because I learned about the law of attraction and well, let's say the law of resonance.
Hmm.
Yeah. And this was about a year and a half even before the I learned about the secret, because this is in many books and things from the past, but that one was the that really kind of commercialized and went kind of mainstream.
Right.
And yeah, and then things went wrong with it, then they made another copy or something. But by the time I saw it, I was already practicing this, like you said, the law of resonance. The world is a mirror to me, and if I need to change, that's what really made me change. Like, well, my life is a hot mess. My health, my relationships, money, everything. I need to change myself.
Yeah,
And
have children. Poof! Instant karma with kids, I'll tell you. But go ahead, go ahead.
I've heard, yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's what really, that, like you said, that law of resonance, bringing that into my life. Like, okay, whatever the world is showing me is a reflection of what's going on within me.
Mhm.
And it's a powerful way that even, again, amidst chaos and crisis or whatever's going on, like you said, is the which world do you choose to live in? Like the violent one, the fear-based one, or the abundant one, the one of love. And like you said, it depends on how you respond. Like you see people, for example, at this time with the quarantine thing, some people having fights in supermarkets over things like toilet paper. Then you see other
Yeah.
people just being kind and nice and, oh, I'm sorry, I'm in your way. Do you want to? Are you going in they're like blocking the aisles. Oh, I'm sorry, and they're being so kind and courteous, and it's seeing this contrast, and you can see it in the same supermarket. That
Yeah.
this contrast of what the state that people are living in and what kind of world they think they're living in.
It's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out and where it lands, you know.
Yeah,
The one thing that I am actively doing is not trying to change anybody's perception.
yeah,
And that seems to be the safest way to navigate this right now. So,
yeah, yeah,
so if someone, I mean, there's a lot of people who are hell bent that this is a conspiracy and that,
yeah,
that this is the way that they're trying to tamp down what was happening in China with all of the democratic reform protesters, the millions of people in Beijing and
yeah,
Wuzhou province and what have you, and that all of a sudden this virus shows up and there's no longer protesters in the street, and or then America didn't pay we had a $100 billion bill that we were supposed to pay to China for a loan that they gave us because we're a debt instrument, what have you, and we didn't make that. And so now, and there's probably about 20 or 30 different things that are being shared about why
yeah,
we're going through this distraction. So
yeah,
I have no idea where this is going to end up. I mean, obviously there's a big correction happening in the markets, and
yeah,
which is just kind of sad. I mean, people's entire retirement funds just disappearing, and like, wow, you know,
yeah,
extraordinary times again. And this is like so much bigger as far as the market's concerned than what happened in 2008.
yeah.
With the housing
Yeah.
crisis. This is that on steroids times a
Yeah,
thousand.
yeah, because I don't remember anything of not being able to travel when quarantines and I don't remember anything like this in my lifetime. It's incredible, and it's like you said, finding security in, like, really i- not even really in yourself, like being okay with just being with what is and just being vulnerable and just present, and connect, that reconnection to nature. I keep losing this trail of thought because the conversation is so just amazing. But it's like you mentioned, like people, they see nature and they see themselves as separate from it, like, oh, that's nature. No, no, we're nature too, we're all in this together. And it's like, without the trees, how are we going to breathe? Without this, how, just the whole where we are in that, in nature. And it's it's that disconnection that maybe this crisis will help people to just realize that connection with themselves or with nature or in the whole.
I hope so. I mean, I hope so. That in 2007. I mean, I've been watching the cycles of consciousness for many, many years on the planet and what have you. And, you know, when the internet finally started taking hold around in the mid 2000s, and people started being really irate about what was happening to the environment and being able to share what this corporation doing, that corporation, and started going worldwide, all this kind of stuff that was going on. And then all of a sudden, you know, somebody wrote this this script that then Vice President Al Gore read, called The Unfortunate Truth. Do you remember that? Or Inconvenient Truth, excuse me, Inconvenient Truth.
Oh,
And
I've heard of
yeah,
that.
and it was a video presentation that went around. What's very interesting is that he was given a Nobel Prize for being the actor that read a script. He did not write it at all, but he got the the Nobel
That's
Prize
crazy.
for reading a script, which I find very interesting.
Mhm.
Anyway, and so all of this was back in 2007, and all of a sudden, you know, ecology and green all of a sudden became a thing. And that year was the biggest Earth Day that ever happened. And there were 6 continents all hooked together via satellite for a worldwide concert for Save the Planet, Save the Planet. And we got a few fluorescent light bulbs and you know, a few eco products and clothing and some clean soaps and stuff like that. But nothing else changed.
Mm.
Our degradation of the environment never changed. Our extraction of the resources never changed. Nothing else changed. And it was kind of like trying to change the direction of the Titanic by moving the furniture around on the deck. Right?
Mm.
That's essentially what we did. And everybody though felt like they were empowered. Oh, go green, go green, go green, and what have you. Yet we're still extracting enormous amounts. And in fact, you know, this economic kind of theory that we live under called capitalism. And I'm not selling communism or socialism, but we live under a planetary kind of acceptance of something called capitalism. And this theory, this structure that is helping the world interact with each other has a few problems. And one of the problems is that every year that whatever business is in business, every year they have to grow and they have to create greater revenues and more money and in order to stay up with the cost of living and all of these adjustments that happen in the value of the dollar and data inflation and all these other kind of things. But every year, every business that exists has to grow. Now, the problem with that is that that requires unlimited resources.
Resources.
And we don't have unlimited resources.
Mm-hmm.
And according to the UN and the World Health Organization and MIT and all these other big think tanks, that by 2050, we're going to need 1.5 Earths of resources to maintain our current consumption. And we don't have an extra half of an Earth of resources hanging around. So, you know, the system will collapse in some capacity. I
Yeah.
mean, it's inevitable. And maybe what's happening now is part of that collapse and reorganization and restructuring. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yet things have to change. I mean,
Yeah.
the way we're doing life, our demand for the products, the conveniences that we have, the ability that you and I have right now just to talk on the computer and share this concept and idea, you know, over 1 billion people don't
Yeah.
have this convenience that you and I are exercising right now. 1 billion, over 1 billion people, right? They say if you have some change in your hand or in your pocket or something like that, you're richer than 99% of the planet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And so in our little cush little pod lives that we have here in America, it's at the expense of other people's lives,
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah.
And until we get a hold of that and really begin to change our behaviors and really begin to change how we are, what resources we think we need, and begin to change our habits, nothing's going to change. You know, and
Yeah.
all of that is based on how we think. And all of
Yeah.
that is based on our relationship to the environment and whether or not is man over nature or man is nature.
It's my, yeah. Yeah. It's very, very true. Yeah. And I
So
think
other than that, I don't have much to say.
yeah. Well, as you said, look, we don't know. We're told a lot of different things. We don't know anything. But what one thing I think we can, everyone, wherever they are on the planet, whatever job position, a CEO, and someone living in a village, on a mountainside can agree that something needs to change, because the earth does not have this like just limitless resources that you can just pound and plunger and not like you said, re-nurture. It's like take but not re-nurture. It's different if the taking was re-nurturing, but it's not. Like even many years ago, I used to love these vitamins. I still take them, like USANA vitamins, but I used to sell them at the time, and one thing that I learned in there while I was selling was that the soil, a lot of the fruits and vegetables and things, the soil, the number, it needs something like 24 minerals or something, but because they have no patience to wait for the soil to, kind of replenish, they keep just reusing it. It's so stripped of the minerals. It has like a handful, I don't know, I can't remember exactly, something like 4 or 7 or something compared to 20 something. So what happens is the roots would be trying to get food from the soil that's not there, and instead they get it from the heavy metals. So then all of a sudden we're eating fruits and vegetables thinking it's healthy, and we're eating, like you said, not just the chemicals they put in it, but even heavy metals that are higher than what it naturally should be found in those fruits. So
Yeah, they consider our current agricultures, at least in the monoculturing that's occurring, to
mhm.
no longer be a soil-based agriculture. And in fact, it's considered to be an oil-based agriculture, that you can't find microbial life. Like here in Hawaii, like some friends of mine bought some land, and they had to go down 12 feet before they could find any live microbes because of all the pesticides and herbs that were used, and herbicides that were used and fungicides to use to grow pineapple.
My
Right?
goodness.
They had killed all the microbial life. Had to go 12 feet down.
12 feet.
12 feet before they could find any live microbial life. Now they have, over the last 10 years, rebuilt all this soil and started introducing new microbes and stuff like that. And now they have this incredible organic garden. But in our agriculture, what we're growing here in these huge monocultures in the United States is considered an oil-based. And the soil, if you will, what's left there, this clay that's left there, is considered to be like a petri dish. And that they have to that the entire thing is dependent on inputs, like you're saying, that they have to input the nutrients, and they're synthetic nutrients, they're not natural
Yeah,
nutrients.
yeah.
And then with the introduction of genetically modified systems, and then the chemicals that are used to grow those and what have you, it's not sustainable.
It's
It's not
not.
sustainable. And
It's
unfortunately, and the thing that we have to remember though too is that these large biotech corporations are telling us that the reason they're doing this is to feed the world, right?
mm,
And just like you did a TED Talk, which I loved your TED Talk, just so you know, and anyone, if you haven't seen her TED Talk, go see her TED Talk.
mm,
But uh, I forget which organization it was, but and I think it was in conjunction with Princeton, Yale, and MIT, along with the World Health Organization and the London Academy of Sciences, that they determined that 85%, 85% of the world's production of food, okay, is done on plots 10 hectares or less, or 5 hectares or less, which is about 10 acres, right? 85% of the food that we eat on the planet, that we're talking, that's not the United States, but on the planet, is
mhm.
grown on 5 hectares of land or less, and
My brain can't
85,
even wrap itself around that. My brain
and
literally can't wrap
I
itself around
know, and then 85% of that is grown by women. So women farmers on small plots of land are responsible for feeding the world. And this other 15% that with monocultures, essentially all they're doing is growing fuel, right? And or feed for animals, right?
that.
80% of the Earth's surface that is used in the United States, 80% of the agriculture is used to grow grain to feed to animals, which feeds less than 1/3 of the population.
Insane. That's Just
You know, it's just like,
I
and
know.
then you add.
Yeah, this is what's going on in my mind.
There's a great book. There's a research journalist named Jeremy Rifkin, and he's
Write that
top
down.
notch, Pulitzer Prize winning author and research journalist. And he wrote a book
What's the
called
name?
Beyond.
Sorry, Joe.
Jeremy Rivkin.
Rifkin. Okay.
Yeah, I believe it's Rivkin. It might be R. No, yeah, I'm pretty sure Rivkin.
Okay.
And he wrote one book in specific called Beyond Beef.
Mm.
And it's a 5,000-year history of man's fascination with the cow. And that, like in India or in Spain, it is the machismo, the bull. That's like the masculine aspect of the cow. And in India, it's the feminine aspect of the cow. And then they go and they talk. He goes through and systematically shows. I mean, the very first entry in Christopher Columbus's journal, right? When he saw land, the whole reason Christopher Columbus even left was that in order, we didn't have refrigeration obviously back then, and
Mm.
the only way to preserve meat was to pack it in herbs and spices, and the only way we can get those herbs and spices was for China, and we had to go through overland to get there. And I forget who it was the Turkish or whoever it was in between them realized that they were the source, and so then they started adding tariffs, and all of a sudden the herbs and spices to save the queen's beef had been like quintupled or something like that. And Columbus found some of Magellan's old maps to get to China, and he told the queen, well, you give me some boats and I can get this stuff for free. I mean, basically, we can buy it at wholesale prices and just kick out the middleman and let's do it. And she said, right on. And he got lost and ended up in South America. And the very first thing he said, so Christopher Columbus's thing had to do with the beef and saving beef and the beef industry. But then the very first thing he says in his journal is like, finally, new prairies for the queen's beef. That was the first thing he said in his journal, in Christopher
My goodness.
Columbus's journal. And then the whole expansion of moving to the west throughout the East-West Railroad was in order to get the cattle to Chicago that they were grazing out on the West Coast, so that then they could process them and then take them to the old world. But then they were losing too much weight, so then they created refrigeration so that they could slaughter them on the West Coast. But all of these things, refrigeration, the East-West, all the metropolitan areas, all the pharmaceutical industries, all of the on and on, all revolved around the animal industry.
Wow.
And that has a huge effect and impact on what's happening to our planet.
Yes, I agree.
Right?
Wow.
So his book, Beyond Beef, is a really scientific and anthropological exploration into what are the real impacts and effects of a primarily beef or animal led diet.
That sounds
And
really, really.
it's brilliant, and it was written in the 90s, and it's more true today. And some of the things that science was saying back then would be the result, such as global the change of global warming and all of these things as a result of how we are destroying our agriculture now, and that carbon sequestration that would normally occur in the fields if you had actual live microbial earth that was being rotated with crops and all this other kind of stuff. But now we have these oil-based things that are like sealed as like a plastic covering over the earth that aren't sequestering any. I mean, the biggest loss of carbon comes from how we farm.
That is incredible.
And that if, and in what they call the humus, the topsoil, and that topsoil retains the carbon. Well, when you don't have topsoil and you just have a clay base, and then that clay base or other topsoil is just coated with oil, it doesn't retain any of the carbon. And so the way we're choosing to just do our agriculture is a greater contributor than all the cars and all the trucks and airplanes and all the stuff that ever happened.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And it's like, destroying the planet from, okay, one thing with the soil and the animals, the agriculture, and then the so-called blanket that covers the earth, the amount of satellites they put in there and bombarding the people, everything with these unnatural rays and frequencies and everything. That something's got to give. And maybe it's this something that we're seeing on the planet right now, like something's how much longer? Eventually something has to give, whether it's in our lifetime or not. Is something has to, because it can't continue like this. I mean, like you
I
said, we
agree with
haven't
you.
got We haven't got
Yeah.
half another planet, like.
Well, like I think I said at the beginning, it was like I hope one of the results of this is that reconnection. You know, that
Yeah.
reconnection. There's a futurist, a guy named Jacques Fresco,
Mhm.
and Jacques Fresco is one of our living geniuses. He's like a Tesla, you know, an Einstein alive today, and he spent a good portion of his life. He's in his 90s now. I mean, and but he was saying since the 1950s that one of the main things that needs to change in our consciousness, if we're really going to be able to coexist here on the planet, is that humans have to realize that the Earth's resources are the common heritage of all life on the planet,
Yeah.
not just human life. So that if we're going to extract this resource and we're going to cause the extinction of some other life, or we're going to hurt the ecosystem in some way, we can't do that anymore. That the resources are the common heritage of all life.
Yeah.
And that's not what we do. We say, we just grab it, hell with everything else. It'll take
Yeah.
care of itself. Mother Earth responds, it'll fix itself. Well, you know,
Yeah.
we won't even get into the nuclear waste and all the other stuff that's going on in this, the water supply and the,
Yeah.
ah,
I
so,
know.
so
It's and also, you know, what you were saying about online right now, all the different conspiracies and everything, and you know, one of them being the 5G and whatever it is. But
right. Yeah.
whatever's happening, the only thing we really have control of, and just really not even control, but just awareness of, is ourselves and how we choose to respond to this.
You know, it's a funny thing because this was back in the early 80s. I was playing Frisbee with Ramdas. We were throwing a Frisbee back and forth. There was several of us and we were on the quad and, um, and I said, you
What
know,
a
I
vision,
don't know.
mental vision was created. That's such a cool picture.
and, and, um, and I remember saying, I said, you know, I'm having a hard time having fun here because of these people that are starving over in Bangladesh and da 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 da. And Ramdas stopped and he said, well, he says, we're trying to do things about that. He says, but we also, there's an important aspect of life whereby we have to live the future that we want to have people living in. In
Mm,
other words, so we can enjoy ourselves and have fun because that's what we want people to be able to have. But if we aren't having fun and being the life that is fun, then it's hard for us to transmit. You know, you have to be the world. You have to be the change you want to see in the world. So you want to see people being happy. Well, you have to exhibit happiness. You want to see. You understand what I'm getting at is
yeah,
that it's
absolutely.
not bad even in these times to be at peace and to witness it and then to do what you can in your little part, you know,
Yeah.
to make a difference, and to watch some comedy and have some fun
Yes.
and you know be light about it at the same time. It's not denying the reality. I mean, you know, yelling the truth or being upset about the truth doesn't make it any more true.
Yeah, doesn't change. Yeah, doesn't change anything either. Like, even if you are angry at how someone does something, or how, you know, responses to whatever government, it doesn't change any, your anger and our collective consciousness. How does that help us, you know,
Yeah.
collectively as well? That's honestly why I share things like today. Me and my husband went for a walk in the woods, and I shared that because I want people to, and I took little videos of the, you know, some birds and the trees and the little, our little path we were taking, just to share that experience with people. So even if it's just for 10 seconds, if they're just tuned into that video, they can tune into nature and just have that, you know, share that moment. And it's okay. Like, you don't have to keep consuming yourself with we know, well, we are, you know, we're aware of what's happening. And, you know, like you said, if you want to see peace, then be peace. If you want to see happiness and health, be healthy and be happy. And we've had so much. I'm so grateful for your time. Like, I've had so much fun. I've learned so much. This is so valuable. I really, really appreciate this, as I'm sure anyone who's watching this, enjoying this conversation, is experiencing. Like, my eyes are watering because it's been such a good conversation, and I really appreciate it. Before I let you go, Dr. Joe, Marshalla, could you share with us, like, I mean, I know we could probably do another podcast just on this, but your experience of, like, how does someone go from having a tag on their toe in the morgue, like, you were clinically like, well, you were dead, and I'm gonna hand that over to you. I don't even know what to say about that. Please take this virtually from me.
How do you relate to that? Yeah. The only thing I can say, you know, I've asked a lot of different people. I asked Wayne Dyer when he was alive. I mean, Tony Robbins, Ram Dass. I'm like, you know, why do you suppose this happened to me? You know, what's the point? And Ram Dass gave me really the one that I like to think about. And he said that like the level of awareness or the energy that needs to pass through your being, um, the system that was in place needed an upgrade. It needed to be rebooted and needed to, because it was no longer able to allow the proper energetics to pass through it. And so that it was a recalibration and a reboot of my system. And then also it was a gift to give me the opportunity to maybe perceive things um, that other people were unable to perceive, or that I was unable to perceive. You know, a lot of things that one of the problems that we see with the drug culture in taking, you know, psychedelics or ayahuasca or LSD or mushrooms or mescaline or peyote or any of the hallucinogenic altering kind of experiences that millions upon millions of people have experienced is that the problem with those experiences is that those experiences let you glimpse a reality, let you take a glimpse of heaven, if you will, or an alternate dimension, but in no way do they allow you to become it. That the work that we keep on talking about here, you have to do the work. And where we get lost is that we have some great revelation and we think that we've learned something new, but then it begins to fade away. So we take the drug again to try and keep those doorways open, and then it begins to fade. Then we take it again and and so how do we keep that door open? And that is then, you know, doing the different things that are either in my book or other practices or whatever to really maintain that. So fortunately for me, I was shown a non-drug related reality and expression and experience and dimension of life that afforded me a perceptual reality that is unshakable. And so as much as I'm just a normal human being, I mean, you know, someone is sitting behind their computer thinking that they're watching me talk. And for me, or like we could pretend that there's two people here having a conversation. And the truth of my reality is that it is talking to itself. And that duality, I can fall into that and pretend as if it's reality, but it no longer exists as a filtering mechanism in my perceptual reality. And in order to function in this world, I have to go to stores and pretend and act and interact. And in order to teach, and in order, I mean, I'm going as deep as I can with this stuff with you right now. But the reality is that for me, my perceptual reality is that there is one being here interacting with itself. It's like, you know, the cells of the toe don't interact with the cells of my finger, but they're all part of one being. And they do affect each other. That if I get an infection in my toe, it can affect the you know, cells in my finger, but it is still only one being that's interacting with itself and so in the same way, the singularity of consciousness that manifests itself in the multitude of the individual life forms, which each are kind of the tip of a neuron of the gestalt of the akasha of the singularity of the oneness brain that is learning about itself here. Is all that truly is happening. And so all of this craziness and all of this destruction of the earth and all this is all part of that process, and really understanding what's important. And the infections in our thought forms and the viruses in our thought forms that is creating the illness on the planet is coming to a healing crisis. And in that healing crisis, it is learning about itself. And I have total optimistic view that we will get it together, and that things will become much more beautiful, probably not necessarily to be seen necessarily in my lifetime, but certainly see it heading in that direction in my lifetime, but certainly for the future. And so the best I can share with you about that experience was that it was an opportunity for me to pierce an unpierceable veil and be given the grace, literally the grace, and the significance of importance. I mean, it's I don't want to say a burden, but it is certainly a responsibility, and what I do with that responsibility. And so I attempt to share that information in my Dead Man Talking lecture, where you can begin to examine what I experienced so as to then maybe redirect what you find as priorities in your life, so as to, the one thing I'll share, okay, there's a whole series of things that you let go of, right?
Let me
There's
grab
a
a
whole,
tissue. You made me cry.
uh,
Okay. I'm sorry. Continue. That's so powerful.
when you're leaving this form, there's a whole series of things that you let go of that lead to the near-death experience and then the actual death experience, okay? And the very first thing that you let go of out of hundreds of things, and I go through several of them in this lecture, but the very first thing you let go of is every structure, every story, every system that you've ever used to give this perception of reality purpose, meaning, and structure. It's the very first thing you let go of. So how much do you want to cling to your story as being the story? Because where you're going, it no longer pertains to. And it's almost as if all these things, even reincarnation, I mean, all these different things that we've used to bring kind of a peace around this experience, a psychological experience of death, and this loss of what we say is life and all this other kind of stuff. I mean, all of that is almost like a little nursery rhyme we tell ourselves so that we can find some, not to be live in fear about it. But we don't spend a lot of time talking about death. I mean, it's not a popular subject, you know, and we're all facing it, you know, but
Yeah.
and I'm not to be morose and not to try and talk about it and try and say that I've got a handle on it. And that's the one thing that the very first thing that I prefaced my lecture with is that I cannot guarantee that what I experience is what you're going to experience. Okay. The fact that I've been through it 3 times past this near death area,
Mhm.
you see what happens is that your heart stops pumping. At some point, your heart stops pumping. When your heart stops, blood stops moving around in your body. And when the blood stops moving around in your body, it starts to drain out of your head. Okay. And the very last part of your brain to have blood is a part of the brain called the hippocampus.
Mm.
Okay. And the hippocampus is responsible for your sights and smells and your perception, earlier on perceptions and all this other kind of stuff. So your very last psychological perceptual brain functioning part is whatever it is you bonded to at the beginning of your life. So if you were brought into a Christian world, your whole framework is around a Christian. If it was a Muslim world, your whole framework is, if it's atheist. So when you are dying, the last vestige of something physical and mental and structural that you can hold on to are those structures. And so you revert to it. And so I've been past that now 3 times. And each one of those times I got to actually witness the formation of those structures that were the foundational structures that I had to let go of. You
Mm.
don't even get a choice.
Yeah.
It's not like you're like, oh, okay, I'll let go. It's no,
Yeah.
you're going to let go of them. And
Yeah.
if there is a hell, if there is a purgatory, it's trying to hold on to those.
Mm.
And
Powerful.
so if you can learn to let go of them now, when you get there, it's not going to be that big of a deal.
Mm.
The last time I went through that doorway, it was like, oh yeah, oh yeah, those, yeah, okay. It wasn't even like a, oh my God. It was like, oh yeah, you recognize that part
Mm.
of the psychological death. And so if there is something that's psychedelics or things, they help you to kind of do that psychological death to a degree. But then there's all these other structures to give it meaning and purpose and importance in your life that we add to that experience
Mhm.
afterwards, right? But if there's something I can say about the death experience, I guess it would be that. It's like, I
Simple.
would say, check out the tools that it's like every one of the religious things, every one of the systems and what have you, they're all like fingers pointing at the moon. right? And we start saying, well, my finger is pointing better than your finger, and your finger is pointing better than my finger is more than yours. I'm going to kill you because I don't like your finger, and all this stuff, as opposed to use whatever tools they have to look at the moon, you know,
Yeah.
and to realize that you are the moon ultimately, but you know, so to get out of the systems and find the tools, and to allow the fixedness that this is how it is to
Mm-hmm.
soften,
Yeah.
and to allow this to be more malleable, because as you make that transition, it will be so much easier and so much less traumatic.
So, so beautiful. I feel like we could have another discussion just on death because, like you said, people have a very unnatural and almost like immature attitude towards it. They don't want to talk about it. The one thing guaranteed to all of us, and yet there's no
Yeah,
kind of peace with, yeah, that's going to happen eventually. It's part of our human experience, and it's people are so disconnected from the reality of it, and they put different, like you said, different meanings, different philosophies to what it is when no one knows that other side, unless you
right.
speak to someone like yourself that's been through these things which hardly anybody has experienced. And so this is
Yeah.
such a valuable
Well, you
such
know,
a
like if
valuable
like
message.
5 or more of your viewers or someone who watches this, if they go do the Dead Man Talking lecture and take that class, and then maybe you could be the moderator for a go-to meeting where we then have a further discussion with people who then, because it's so much easier instead of me spending 2.5 hours here, you know, trying to explain all the things, all the subtleties. They can do it on their own time, and then they can bring their questions forth, and we can have a group kind of experience here around that subject,
I'm down for that. Yeah, that sounds like so much fun.
if that would be of service. I mean, I'll do what I can, you know.
You guys, I'm going to put all the information below. Okay, make sure you check out all of those links. Dr. Joe, Marshalla, this has been such a pleasure. I don't know how this experience has been for you, but seeing as we are, the same consciousness experience itself, or I have had so much. I can't believe the time has flown. Like, I don't know about you, but the time has flown. I feel like I could talk to you all night and forget dinner and everything. Like, I just feel like we
I know,
could
I
talk
looked at my clock and I was like, 2 hours and
all night.
15 minutes. What?
I know, I know. I was like, oh my God.
No
But
such thing as time, I guess, huh? You know, it's the same for me. I'm just so grateful to be of service. I mean, the fact that my life's work is assisting you in your life's work is graceful likes I've never seen. And I feel the same way. I mean, this is why I stayed alive, was to do this, to one more time, you know. So thanks for needing me to do this so that I could get back in my body. You know.
it's such a pleasure. And Dr. Jamashala, how can people get in touch with you? Where can they support your work?
The best place is joemarshalla.com, marshalla.com, or repeatlessness.com. It takes you to the same place. The URL or the actual website is repeatlessness, repeatlessness, repeatlessness.com, and then the forwarding link is joemarshalla.com. But either one, there's tons of free stuff there, guys. There's everything that's on YouTube is on there in the video section. There's classes. There's you can download all of my lectures for free down MP3, so you can carry them around on your phone and listen while you're driving or at work or wherever. And then send me an email. You got a question, you want to talk, send me your email, send me a phone number. We'll talk on the phone, just like we did here on this video. I'll do it. That's why I'm here. You can't interrupt my life. This is my life. This is why I'm here, is to be of service. And so if I can be of service, let me know. And that's the best I can tell you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Joe. Mashallah, it's been such a pleasure. I really, really appreciate this, and almost it's surreal for me. So it's been an amazing experience. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Namaste and aloha.
Yeah, thank you.